Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Seattle-based jazz saxophonist Steve Tresler. We talked to him on May 26, 2020 during the pandemic about this new world of no live jazz. DownBeat calls his music beautifully crafted ensemble pieces, whether free, thoroughly composed, or somewhere in between. He grew up in the midst of Seattle's grunge scene before moving to Boston to pursue his studies on scholarship at the New England Conservatory of Music, studying with legends like Jerry Bergonzi, Bob Brookmeyer, George Garzone, and Steve Lacy. He's got a great tale to tell. Enjoy.
Well, I think it's probably a good idea to talk about the music, and I appreciate you taking time during this surreal world to talk about things.
Yeah, well, it's good. I guess I can't say that I don't have the time, so...
Yeah, I think we all have a little bit of that on our hands. So your latest 2020 CD, Snow Aligned Suite, talk to me a little bit about, I think the interesting thing about new material coming out right now is that there's the latitude for people probably to listen to it a little bit more. I think people are listening to music and indulging in arts a little bit more, but it can't be backed up by live performances. So talk to me a little bit about that juxtaposition.
Sure. So this came out in March. You know, I'd planned the release before, you know, the whole world shut down due to the pandemic. And that, as you say, that is true to some degree. I ended up having more digital sales on Bandcamp, that there were people at home with some time and bandwidth to listen to music and some goodwill towards supporting artists who, as all our gigs are canceled, were able to help support us in other ways. And yeah, I had some, you know, the CD release show through Earshot and some potential travel dates. You know, those were canceled. But, you know, once things get going again, I still plan on performing material from Snow Aligned Suite, and, you know, just kind of put the pause button on it, but be able to roll that in with some other projects down the road. So, yeah, that's where that's at.
Right on. Well, and it's very clear that, you know, Seattle has been, you know, very much so part of your life in the grunge scene, as you mentioned in your bio. Talk to me a little bit about your roots and how jazz actually became the past.
Sure. So I grew up just north of Seattle in a city called Edmonds, and started playing clarinet in fifth grade band. But a lot of my, this is where I returned after I studied at school back east, you know, came back to Seattle. Just, it's the area culturally, it's, you know, where it's always felt like home, and a lot of my experiences hiking and skiing out in the mountains, it's partly the inspiration for this piece, Snow Aligned Suite. And, but yeah, started playing in school band. You know, I just wanted to join the middle school jazz band. I thought it was pretty cool, saw other kids playing in it, and I just got into it and got deeper and deeper and found it satisfying to play and challenging, and just getting more to the music. Started listening to Lester Young and Coltrane and Clifford Brown, and just became really absorbed in the music when I was in high school, which set me on the path to head out to New England Conservatory, study with Jerry Bergonzi and Bob Brookmeyer and a bunch of amazing teachers. But that Northwest identity has been a part of, it's part of me, it's a part of, it's one of the streams that goes through all of my releases. There's some kind of element of the culture of the Northwest, or in this case, the natural landscapes. And so I still have a whole network of musicians and friends back east, so I like making it back to, last year made it to New York and Boston to do some playing and reconnecting with people, and I love, when any of my friends and colleagues are out west, you know, being able to collaborate with musicians from around the country.
You know, I took a trip to Seattle. I was a big grunge fan, and I went up, and I think it was around 98, I believe, when I went up there. 96, maybe, 98. At any rate, I remember going up there and going to some clubs, and there was one that I was at specifically, and the people that I was with, they were from Seattle, and they're like, look, if you run into anybody, whether it's Eddie Vedder or Cornell or whoever it is, just be cool. That's how this scene rolls. And I remember I went to a club, and there was a really good set going on, and the drummer for Soundgarden happened to be in the crowd, and the drummer that was playing on stage didn't like mount his bass on the ground, and his mic fell off, and he, of all the people in the crowd that ran up to help, it was the Soundgarden dude, and I always remember that, and I just remember, you know, them saying that in that spirit. No one really mobbed them. It was all good. So I really enjoy being up there during, I mean, and at that point, 96, I mean, that was in the thick of the soup. That was when everything was roaring. So it was kind of a cool scene up there.
Oh yeah, I mean that's when I went anywhere. It's like, oh, you're from Seattle. Oh, cool. You know, it was like the center of the universe for a few years there in the 90s. Yeah, at that point, you know, when Nirvana and Pearl Jam hit it big, you know, I was younger. I was in middle school, you know, so I think I was in 8th grade or something when Kurt Cobain passed. So I wasn't in the, you know, I was a little too young to be in the, you know, when all that was stewing in the smaller clubs and venues and all of that. But, you know, we're all deeply influenced by any of that music we listen to, and we're coming of age, you know, when it's, just that time of our lives that gets deeply embedded. So, I mean, a lot of those sounds and, you know, the emotional intensity or spirit of that music ends up coming out in different ways in music I play today. And even more directly on my album Center Song, I actually covered, it's my 2013 record, one of my collaborations with Ingrid Jensen. We actually covered a song by Sunny Day Real Estate, which is my favorite kind of alternative Seattle band from that era.
Yeah, I remember buying one of their CDs when I was up there and thought that was totally awesome that I got it from Seattle. What was the label? What was that label that was big up there that they were on?
Sub Pop.
Sub Pop. Yep. And I remember even getting a bootleg of Pearl Jam stuff, like a bunch of like B-sides. And when I came home, my friends were like, "Wow, where did you get this?" And I was like, "Some record store in Seattle." You know,
yeah.
It was pretty cool. So.
That was it. Yeah, that brings back some memories. Well, now there's a boutique. There's a Sub Pop store at the airport, you know, where they sell little trinkets and collectible LPs. So, you know, it's not. different time now. You can buy, you know, they're reissuing cassette tapes.
Yeah.
And I have my friend Dan Kramlich. He's played on one of my records. He's a piano player, but he has a grunge trio out of Seattle. But they play piano trio arrangements of, you know, Alice in Chains and Pearl Jam. But in a way, you listen to it and it loses, you know, aesthetically it's not grunge anymore, but just like kind of doing almost standard piano trio arrangements of these tunes is pretty cool. I think you dig it.
Totally. So what do you like the best about being a musician?
Oh, boy. Well, that there's so much. I mean, really, what I'm seeking to do and be is to be, you know, fully expressed as an artist and musician, and also connected with other people. I mean, through music and just personal connections, through audiences and other musicians I'm working with. You know, being able to travel and connect with musicians and audiences, and you know, it's so much of, but even my personal relationships and deep friendships, you know, it's all connected through music. So it's hard to imagine what another path would be like. But yeah, it's being able to make all those connections, you know, through music and socially, traveling, and just having, I mean, the pursuit of, you know, this transcendence through music, and music is endlessly fascinating, and there's always, and challenging, and there's just always more to work on, you know, in this pursuit of mastery.
What was the first live jazz show that you saw that really made you think, man, this is something I would like to do with my life?
Boy, there were a couple when I was in high school in the 90s, when big impact seeing Joshua Redman live, also Michael Brecker live in Seattle. So it's like just being totally blown away by the artistry and just seeing I remember even talking to Michael Brecker backstage at Jazz Alley, and he said, totally. It was one that I went back several nights in a row. My friend, they were touring with, after 2 Blocks from the Edge, the record with that iconic Delta City Blues, that, pyrotechnic saxophone introduction. At that point, they'd recorded, but they hadn't even named the song. So when that one came up, he said, okay, now next we're going to play one. So far we have it called Number 3, and my friend and I would just be cheering because we knew what number 3 was. That's when he would burst into the Delta City Blues intro. But I talked to him, and he said, being a musician, this lifestyle of a musician, it's a great way to live. And he was pretty encouraging about the path and the life. Just even me talking to him for a second, but just seeing people play at that level, just even thinking, wow, this is something maybe I could do. And I had thought it was a pipe dream. Most well-meaning adults in my life at that time would say, well, being a musician, that means you're going to die poor and lonely. So you need to get a real job and play music on the side. But I started to see, models of other folks who weren't the Joshua Redmonds of the world, but folks who were working freelance musicians and had a decent quality of life through playing and teaching music, and saw some people locally. It's like, well, if these people are doing it, I know it's a possibility. So those were some of the things and some of my peers that were going into music. So seeing the models of the peers, other professionals, and then some of these luminaries that came through town. That's what got me going on the path professionally.
You've been at this long enough. If you had a dream tonight and you could run into your younger self right around the time you started playing and give your younger self one bit of advice, what would it be?
There's this great Ira Glass quote, and I know I'm gonna butcher it, where he's giving advice to young writers, saying that when you start out, you have really good taste, and when you're in the early stages of your art that what you're doing just isn't living up to your expectations or where you want it to be, and it can be really frustrating, and that's where people can get really burnt out or quit or get frustrated. But understanding that model of where you want to go, understanding that that's sort of your North Star, and you're moving in that direction, and every little thing you do, it's all about being on the process, being on the journey, and not getting too bent out of shape about imperfections or things not living up to where you want it to be. Just knowing that you're moving in that direction, and that the motion and growth, and having fun along the way. That's more important than measuring. Getting too caught up in measuring the outcomes or comparing yourself to other people in negative ways. Kind of a long answer, but basically embracing.
No, that's good.
Embracing the journey and knowing where you're oriented and focusing on that, and letting other stuff slip away.
So let me ask you this: when did you realize, as this COVID-19 started taking hold, maybe in early to mid-March? Like, what was your personal story? About trips and things that started canceling. How did you realize and know that this was going to become a really big thing and jazz was going to be silenced?
Yeah, so it started, the last thing I did that felt kind of normal was I was at the Lionel Hampton Jazz Festival. That's at University of Idaho. I was presenting clinics and doing some playing, but it was the last time we had some epic late night jam sessions, and there was some amazing concerts. Joshua Redmond and Ron Miles' group was playing, and that was when the whispers of the COVID-19 pandemic. Apparently there was talking about that I had heard that there was one of the very first cases they were breaking in Western Washington, and apparently there was a kid who went to the same school as one of the bands who was there who tested positive, who wasn't in the band, but suddenly, at the very tail end of that festival, there were whispers of, things have landed here in the U.S. And then pretty quickly things were starting to, and actually I think it was the following week, so this is very early March. I came down with a cold. It wasn't the virus, but I was coughing, and when I realized, I shouldn't if I have any symptoms at all, I sort of shouldn't be out. And that's when I moved some of my private lessons over to teaching remotely online and just kind of staying in. And so I actually got a little bit of a head start on trying to move what I could online and teaching lessons via Zoom and that kind of thing. But I mean, that's sort of a blur. But yeah, early mid-March, and then it was pretty clear, the schools needed to be shut down. And I mean, at that point, I knew, through the spring, all this stuff wasn't going to happen. The CD, it was just throughout a couple-week period, made the decision to pull the plug on my CD release show, and then the club temporarily closed down, a week or so after. And yeah, I knew I didn't have a super busy spring, but I had some guest artist things canceled. I was supposed to be in a week or two going to Honolulu to teach for the jazz program for the Hawaii Youth Symphony, and all that was. It was pretty clear early on, even though a lot of these things weren't officially canceled. But in my mind, pretty early on, I sort of saw the writing on the wall, and had to make some changes. And in some ways, as improvisers, were somewhat, not I don't want to say well suited, but we're able to make some of these changes, because we as improvisers, many times we put some sort of self-imposed limitations on our music and try to, as sort of a structure for creativity, improvising within certain limitations, whether it's a prompt for more open improvisation or a set of chord changes and being able to be creative within that structure. So I mean, if you look broadly, the whole game, the whole rules of the game and of life have changed, and we have to adapt and be creative in order to thrive at all in this new world.
So when we do return, when musician and crowd returns, what do you hope we realize from this time away from live jazz?
How special and sacred that space is when we're all back together in the same room and the magic of the music is happening. I mean, it's cool to live stream concerts and be connected, but that there's something really magical when it can happen in the same space with people that all value this kind of creative music together. Really appreciating how special that is. And also knowing in what ways now we're connecting in different ways. In some ways we're seeing how geographically, there are many ways now that we're post-geographic that we're able to connect online. And I'm actually kind of being in touch with some of my friends, all over the world. I'm actually sometimes now in lockdown more in touch with some folks in distant locations, since it's all, we're all, communicating virtually. So there will be some elements of how we've embraced technology in this time that there will be some benefits going forward.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a level of adaptability that goes into it. So my final question to you is this. Everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, and your fans, but you're the one living your life. Who do you think you are?
Yeah, I mean, who we are, I mean, it's some combinations of how we feel about life and ourselves, our feelings, but also kind of the impact we're making outwardly. So there's a mix of that. I mean, as I said earlier, what I'm really seeking to do is to be fully expressed as an artist and connected with others in the process, and then as an educator helping others do the same, to be fully expressed artists and making that kind of impact. So, on good days I'm moving in that direction. But also really dedicated to my family and being, working on musical and educational projects that I'm, proud to have done after the fact, and also, embracing the day and finding, being able to, being connected with people most important to me.
Perfect, man. Hey, thanks for taking some time out today during this very surreal time on the planet to talk about music. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's always good to Yeah, always good to chat about these things.
Thanks for listening and tuning into another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest cats in Seattle, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Steve for his time, music, and stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.